Hello, everybody. Chris Cavazos here in Ef'n Molina. We have the Honorable Judge Mario Ramirez here today, Mario Ramirez Jr., the District Court Judge for the 332nd District Court here in Hidalgo County, Texas. It's an honor to have you here, sir. We appreciate it. For the people who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mario Ramirez. I'm the judge of the 332nd District Court. I've been there for quite a while. Matter of fact, I was the first judge in that court. And I've been the only judge in that court. And it was established back in 1983. So I've been around for a while.
And to put it simply, Chris, I mean, when you mention the name Judge Mario E. Ramirez, within South Texas and in Texas, he's like a legal legend. You're a legal legend down here.
If you stick around long enough, you become a legend, right?
Can you tell us, why did you decide to practice law?
Well, chemistry did me in when I was a freshman in college rather. So I had to look for alternative professions rather than the sciences. And actually, I had always been interested in being a lawyer and doing the law. So like everybody else, when you first go to college, you think you want to do one thing, but you're not really sure about it. And the cards fall where they may, and my cards fell in the liberal arts rather than in the science field. So I'm thankful of the decision that I made to go into law. And, the same reason everybody goes into law. You have high ideals when you first start out, and you hope during your career that you're able to make some dent in society and to keep up with the ideals that you have. I think everybody goes into law with that idea. Make a little money is not a bad idea either. So, it's like everybody else.
Your father was a doctor, a very influential doctor here in the Valley. Did he want you to be a doctor, or was that something that he kind of wanted you?
He did. I worked at his hospital from an early age. I worked with him, and he took me in to see surgeries. I went to an event the other day at the University of Texas in Edinburgh, where RTV had, honoring my father. And Dr. Cigarro was saying, I was Dr. Francisco Cigarro, who used to be the chancellor. Now he's still very big at the University of Texas. Yeah, he saw his first operation at my dad's hospital in Roma and became a doctor. And I told him I saw my first operation in Roma too and became a lawyer. So different things have different effects on people.
And Judge, how was your dad's reaction initially to the transition from being a doctor to becoming a lawyer?
My dad always wanted his children to be happy and wanted them to do what they wanted to do to keep them happy. I have two doctors in the family. My two of my younger brothers are doctors, and there's another lawyer. And there was my sister who passed just recently was an educator. So he was happy with what the children turned out to be.
I know quite a bit about your dad and doing some research on him. Can you tell, the listeners a little bit about who your father was? And because I know he was a board of regent member for University of Texas. It was a very important member.
He was he graduated from high school at an early age. He was almost 16 when he graduated, and went to the University of Texas right at the beginning of World War II. And because he had wanted to go to medical school, always wanted to go to medical school. He had a younger brother that passed away from what he now recognizes was probably osteomyelitis, was an infection in the bone. And he had wanted to be a doctor from a very early age. And when he went to the University of Texas, he went there for 2 or 3 years. And the need for doctors was great at that time because of the war. And he was accepted also at a very early age to the University of Tennessee. So he went to Tennessee and he became a doctor. And he came back to Roma, where we're all originally from, and practiced there for the next 50 years or so. He started the only hospital in Stark County and was the only physician in Roma for a long time. And he accomplished quite a bit. He was very big. He was a regent at the University of Texas, and always through the rest of his life, was very closely associated with the University of Texas. And they have a center in Harlingen that's dedicated to him, a little museum that has his papers and that has recognized him, and that's still open for the public to go see.
And if you think about it, there's probably countless generations now that have been touched by him, that helped birth their grandma and probably their mom, and it's a sane amount of influence in that little city.
Yes, he was it was interesting. He noticed the high rate of diabetes in his clinic, and he did a great big study and got people to come down and do studies on diabetes, and contributed greatly to the healing of, not the healing, but the control of diabetes in the Valley by the studies that he started and that he engendered, that had other people come and do research on it. So yes, he's touched a lot of people in that way, delivered countless babies, and saw a lot of people.
And Judge Ramirez, the stories that I've heard about your dad, I don't know if they're true or not, but the stories that I've heard is that sometimes your dad would accept like payment in terms of oranges, goats, and that he would really like focus on the lower like income people and really really helping them.
It's a really funny story, but that's true. He would do house calls. My mother would go with him. My mother was a nurse. They met when my father was in medical school. My grandfather would go with him out to the ranches, because it was a very rural community back then. And he would accept payments, different payments. And, my dad was very conservative. It's just a funny story. He did okay. I'm not saying he was poor, that we were poor. I mean, we did okay. But he was always against Medicare because, he thought every person should pay for themselves. And he never made any money until Medicare came in, because people couldn't pay Medicare came in. Then, he was able to buy a nicer car, fix a house and do a lot of things that he never would have gotten were it not for Medicare. But people still received care whether he got paid or not. But the point is, it was a little nicer for him once Medicare came in, because so many of his patients were poor.
And Judge, can you talk a little bit about your mother, I guess, how she met your father, etc.?
He was a nursing student in Shreveport, and my dad was doing I think they called it either an internship or a residence back then at the hospital in Shreveport, because it was real close to Tennessee, where he went to medical school. And they met, and they were married. 1949, I believe, was when they got married. And she moved back to him in Rome and didn't speak a word of Spanish. My grandmother didn't speak a word of English. And they worked it out. My grandma didn't learn English, put it that way. My mother learned Spanish, and she was able to communicate very well for the rest of her life in Spanish here in the Valley.
I guess, Judge, taking off on that is, your dad went to Tennessee. You for college, you went to Notre Dame. That's a lot of pride in that. How did you end up deciding to go to Notre Dame?
Kind of a lifelong dream. Of course, like everybody else, I was a football fan, and doing that, I was fairly religious when I was younger. I lost that along the way. I was a lot of Catholics aspire to go to Notre Dame, and eventually the dream came true. I was able to go. Since then, one of my brothers went there. Several of his children went there. 2 of his children. My daughter went there. So it's a tradition now. We're alum. We're legacies there now.
A lot of, I guess, traditional Hispanic families, we try to encourage our children to stay close to home.
Yeah.
And since your father had gone to Tennessee, he's like, no, son, you need to leave. It's the best for you. It's best for the family, type of thing. Did he
no,
like that, or do you want you close?
No, actually, my father. It was as much my father's dream that his children go to Notre Dame as it was ours. My father was very religious and was very big on Notre Dame, and it was his dream that at least some of his children go to Notre Dame. So yeah.
So you were doing a dream for him, in a way.
A dream for him, sure. For a lot of reasons. Football is a great influence on people. There was always Notre Dame fans around. And my dad really wanted us to go, probably more for religious reasons than anything else. And Notre Dame was the place for Catholics to go at that time, and still is.
And Judge, how was it up there in school? I know, you're a tall man, so a lot of people might not say anything intimidating to you, but an Hispanic man at that time up there, how were you treated?
We were treated well. There was a very large Hispanic community in South Bend. And we were lucky enough to have met some of them through other students that were at Notre Dame who had roots in the community up there. And, we got to have a good meal, enchiladas, tacos once in a while. And I really was not treated badly at all. or discriminated against in any way. There were several other friends that I had from Texas, and we both Hispanic and Anglo, and I really never felt out of place at Notre Dame. I made some good friends there. There was Hispanic studies were just starting there, and there was a professor, Professor Zamora, who was very close to all the Hispanic students there and would have them over to his house, have us over to his house, and various other professors that joined Notre Dame while I was there. They were students at the time and later became professors there. So we never felt out of place. And South Bend, I'm not saying it was the perfect place. The town probably wasn't. They had racial tensions, of course, but it was more black and white than Hispanic and white. The tensions were.
And how did you find your way to St. Mary's School of Law?
The St. Mary's Law School? They took me, so I went. No, it was a very good school, and I always thought St. Mary's was a good school. A lot of the lawyers from the Valley went to St. Mary's. A lot of the lawyers that I knew, and a lot of the people that I knew, they were in high school, had gone to St. Mary's. So that was, it was a place I wanted to go. I love San Antonio. I still do love San Antonio. My son, as a matter of fact, was practicing law in San Antonio, and he loves San Antonio as much as we did. Yeah, so.
What kind of law is he practicing, Judge?
My son, he does oil and gas, mostly oil and gas litigation. He started, like most of us do, with the DA's office, like many people do, with the district attorney's office there. I love doing that, but it's not that lucrative. So he went and joined a insurance defense firm. But his wife, funny, he met his wife in law school, and while she was going to law school, she was a landman. I know you all don't do oil and gas. I don't know if you know what a landman is, but a landman goes ahead of the oil companies and does research on titles and make sure that the title is good. And then they approach the owner, the surface owners of the property, about leasing the land for oil and gas purposes. And his wife did that, even though she was not a lawyer. She knew all about how to do title research. So when she and Eddie got together, before they got married, she got Eddie into doing the landman's work as well. And they travel all over South Texas. I mean, they were in Cotulla, LaSalle County quite a bit, and really all over the place. And when they both graduated, they got married, and they continued doing the landman work, principally before he started even the DA's office. But he developed a really keen interest in oil and gas. And it's funny, while she was doing landman work first, she'd now become a probate and estate lawyer, and he's doing primarily oil and gas now. And he really likes oil and gas.
And I could vouch for your son, like Eddie. I played football. Yeah. I played football with him.
Okay.
I believe he played middle linebacker. I was more of a pansy and played wide receiver. So, but when we would have our I don't know if they still do it, but when they would line us up and hit each other, I would always watch where Eddie was in line, because I did not want to go up against him just because of how hard he would hit.
He was enthusiastic, I'll give him that.
Yeah, he was a hard hitter.
Yeah. We'd always watch him play, and somebody would say, "Oh, what a number 54 throwing up on the field." Eddie always had nervous stomach.
Yeah. For some reason, a lot of us on that team, I don't know what it was, but we attended law school. Eddie's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, Rob's a lawyer.
That's right, Rob.
And I think what explains it is we were just so bad, as a football team, that we would be so far behind. We would just have philosophical discussions there on the sidelines because we weren't going to win.
That's right. We were awful in high school too. I played for Rio Grande City, and we were awful. We were terrible.
What position did you play?
I was a defensive tackle. Coach Vela, Ef'n Vela, who coached here for a long time in McAllen, was our coach back at the end, and Coach Valdemar Montalvo, who's from Far. I always tell the people that I played with, Coach Montalvo was tough, and ultimately, when he retired, he did a lot of volunteer work, and he did some work with the Juvenile Probation Department. I like to tell my teammates that Coach Montalvo worked for me, and he did. He was a volunteer, but I like to tell everybody.
when you went to Notre Dame, Judge, did you ever think about trying out like for the football team?
I was a walk-on for a bit.
Oh, really?
And,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was too slow and not big enough. You read in the programs, though he weighs 240, he weighed 312 pounds. Oh my God, those guys were huge even back then.
The listeners, they don't know how tall you are.
So they were embarrassed by their weight, so they would put a lesser weight on the program.
And Judge, the listeners don't know, how tall are you actually?
Well, it's funny that you should ask. I went to a new doctor recently. I've lost 3 inches in height.
Wow.
I've got scoliosis on my back. I saw an MRI of it. It's crooked. And I dropped 3 inches. I was 6'3" at one time.
And so I'm going to say you're small.
6 feet tall now. Still not little, but not the regal 6'3" that I was at one time.
Well, one of the jokes I've been saying as I've gotten older is they don't tell you that in the manual when you get this body that your body's going to start changing.
They don't tell you. It starts to go bad.
I mean, to lose 2 inches is a lot.
What you got to look forward to if you all played football is arthritis in your knees and in your back and your hips. And that just comes naturally from all the pounding and stuff. If you've been a runner, the same thing. Your bones wear thin, the cushion is gone between the bones and stuff, and everything hurts. That's what you got to look forward to. The golden years really aren't all that golden. They're more like copper. Green copper.
I would say the green copper from the Statue of Liberty. You got your bachelor's in 1972?
That's right, yeah.
And then I guess, did you graduate from law school in 75?
Yes, I did, but I was through in 74.
Okay. So you went pretty quickly.
I did it in 2.5 years, and you were required to be there a certain amount of time at that time. I don't know if that's still true, but I was practically done because I went during the summer times. I was married, and my wife, we were expecting a baby by the end of my law school time, so I wanted to get out and get into practice. I regret it a little bit now. I'd like to have gone a little more slowly. I've enjoyed the law school experience a little more, but we were in a hurry. We got through in 2.5 years. By the time I graduated, it was January 75 when I graduated. I had already taken and passed the bar by that time. I was ready to go ahead and start practicing.
Within the courthouse, there are some portraits hanging on the sides of the one of the courthouse like hallways where the lawyers' lounge is. Mm-hmm. And if you compare the lawyer pictures from the 50s and 60s and compare it to your class, which is the 1970s, those 1970 class of lawyers, it almost looks like a picture from the movie Animal House. Because everyone has the long sideburns, these crazy mustaches.
Yeah.
I mean, it just looked like these guys look like some guys you really wanted to hang out with. How was it?
Oh, that was just the style. I mean, it really was just the style. I mean, lawyers were as aggressive then as they are now. I wouldn't say cutthroat. There was. The lawyers were tough back then. I mean, they were tough for their clients the way they had to be. That was you got to remember that this was very conservative community, and in terms of lawsuits. Back around when that group of lawyers started, when those portraits were taken, is when the torts really started in the Valley, where lawyers really became aggressive, not in terms of advertising, but in terms of filing lawsuits and not being afraid to take lawsuits to court and winning lawsuits. Several of my classmates, I remember Beto Munoz was a very good friend of mine. We grew up in the same neighborhood. Beto was probably one of the first that was really, really aggressive in trying lawsuits and winning large settlements for his clients and winning large verdicts for his clients. So don't let the looks of those Animal House looking people deceive you. It was a group of very competent, very good lawyers. At the same time, there was the deal when smuggling really was going big in the Valley. And a lot of lawyers were aggressively defending criminal cases at the same time. So again, looks are somewhat deceiving. These guys are no dummies.
The other thing that you notice from those pictures, which is obvious, is that there's an increase of Hispanic lawyers, especially within the 1970s. What was that like?
I never knew it before that time. The judges, I guess, when I started, there were 4 district judges. 3 were Anglos, and with Judge Fidencio Guerra was the Hispanic judge. But shortly after that, Joe Cisneros took over from Judge Smith, so there was 2 and 2. Then Arturo Guerra and I became district judges, so it was, as soon as Judge Evans was the only Anglo judge that was left. And, things changed. I guess education in the Valley really came a long way. There's no other way to explain it except that, Hispanic families wanted their kids to succeed and made sure they got college educated, and that consequently going to law school was the next step for many of them. Being doctors was the next step for many of us. So, you just look at the populations, it's the way it should be. I mean, we're mostly Hispanic. There should be mostly Hispanic judges and doctors, just based on the population, but nothing else. And that, thank God, is the way that it has turned out in the Valley.
And Judge, can you tell us a little bit about your career as a lawyer? I mean, it's something that I've always been interested in. I've never talked to you about what kind of law you practice. I mean, I've known you as a judge, since before I was even born, you were a judge.
Right.
So can you tell me a little about your legal career?
I started out, I worked for the Department of Public Welfare, doing child support. Child support was under them rather than the Attorney General back at that time. And it paid more than any other position paid. So, I went ahead and took that, and I did that for a year and a half or so. And then I came back, and my former brother-in-law started a practice in McAllen. We did a variety of things, general practice, did a lot of divorces. We're lucky enough to have some good personal injury cases that we were able to succeed on. And being from Starr County, I had some Starr County clients back then who were good enough to give us some business, and we did a lot of criminal law back then. So we were lucky. We did well, and it's funny the way that it started back then. Since we were just to partnership, there's a lot of hustle to get business. I mean, you go to bars every night, hand your cards out. You go to every event that you can and hand your cards out in the hopes of getting people to come into your office. And it was really pretty hectic. So when 1980 rolled around, one of the judges that was there decided to run for district court. And because of the time and the laws, he had to resign his office to be able to run for district judge. And when that became available, it was a position of county court for 1 year. And I said, well, what the heck, I'll take it for a year if I can get it and have a little vacation here. And so I, was lucky enough to get appointed by the commissioners to be the county court at law, county court number 2. There was only 2 county courts back then. And I was lucky enough to get appointed, and I served for a year as a county court. Found that I really, really enjoyed doing it. And when the next district judge spot became available, I applied for that. I was lucky enough to get appointed by the governor. And pretty much has been it since then. I've been on the bench since then.
Just so the listeners understand, I know the difference between a district court and a county court, but what is the difference between that? What does that mean?
Well, county courts handle misdemeanors, which are crimes which are punishable by time in the county jail. District courts handle felonies, and felonies are crimes which are more serious. They're punishable by time in the penitentiary. And, they also include, of course, death penalty cases. The district courts try those kind of cases. The district courts also try juvenile cases, which the county courts cannot do or do not do. The jurisdiction on the amounts in the district courts is much higher. There's no upper limit on the amounts that people can sue for in the district court. And there's a limit in the county court. I really don't recall what that limit is, but the district court is unlimited to what people can sue for. District courts also are the courts that can try titles to land. The county courts can't try titles to land. The district courts handle that. District courts are in charge of the county auditor. We hire and fire the county auditor. So it's just probably a little more heavy cases than there are in the county courts. So the county courts, by the sheer volume, certainly work extremely hard. And of course we all do, but I mean, what they do is very serious as well.
It's handle a lot more volume because, I mean, hopefully there'll be a lot less smaller crimes than the serious felonies in a community.
Yes, you'd hope so. And then the great majority, I'm sure, are driving while intoxicated cases in the county courts. And that alone is very difficult to handle. And we all think those are very serious cases that have to be handled. You have to be a very good judge to be able to handle those effectively.
And Judge, in your time, I guess, as on the judiciary, I mean, how has the prosecution of DWIs changed? I know in my time it's changed, and I've only been practicing for 11 going on 12 years.
Yeah. Well, as I say, when I first started, it was just me and Judge Arturo Guerra were the two county court judges, and it was overwhelming. We didn't have much time to try any civil cases. We were mostly doing driving while intoxicated cases almost every week. It's certainly the cases are taken a lot more seriously now than they used to be. And I see felony DWIs, so I think those are very serious offenses. I mean, there's treatment programs now that we didn't have, which I think are effective. It's better than the person going back untreated and just going back into society and hoping that he doesn't drink anymore or abuse drugs anymore. So the state has set up these various treatment centers, and I find that they've been effective in some cases. There's aggressive prosecution of DWIs now, but again, they were always aggressive. So, we don't try. I don't remember the last time I tried a DWI, Chris, so I can't really tell you, they're harder or more, because when they get to the felony stage, they're almost all pleaded guilty by the time they get to be felony DWIs, because you can go to the penitentiary for 10 years. So people really don't want to put their hands in a jury for having having the third DWI. I mean, how do you defend yourself? You can't. I mean, if you go on the stand, the defendant has to say, yeah, I've been convicted twice of DWI. So, I mean, he already has 2 strikes against him, and it's difficult for him to tell his side of the story when that stuff is going to come out.
And Judge Ramirez, we have a juvenile detention center that's named after you.
Yes, sir.
How did that happen?
I had nothing to do with it. Honestly, it was much surprise to me as it was to everybody else. The former director of the juvenile probation department, Buddy Silva, was there for 40 years as a juvenile, in one capacity or another. And he and I got to be very close, and we would, every facility in Hidalgo County that holds a juvenile for any length of time has to be examined personally by the district judge that's in charge of the probation department. So Buddy and I traveled throughout the county taking care of those, making sure that all the facilities were safe. We got close doing that. Buddy and I traveled quite a bit together to see how other facilities functioned and how different things that were happening. We tried to keep up. So that's when we got to be very good friends. And I'm getting to the point now. Buddy secretly went behind my back to the commissioners and asked them to name the facility after me. And the commissioners, or Judge Ramon Garcia was the county judge there. He and I have been close friends for 50 years now, 45 years or so. So Ramon was very enthusiastic about it, and the commissioners were kind enough to have named the place after me, and I'm very grateful to them for having done it.
I know, again, just because of your years of experience, how has that changed as far as the juvenile system? I know, my understanding is back, when you first started, it was a little bit more lenient maybe, and it's got a lot more strict, a lot more, similar to the adult system. Is that true?
It is, but it depends on how you look at it. I've always looked at it where the criminal justice system, the adult criminal justice system is punitive in nature. In other words, you punish somebody. The juvenile system to me has always been a rehabilitative system. You bring the kids in and you do everything you can to rehabilitate the kids. And if you can't do it, eventually, sadly, then it becomes a problem for the adults. You can certify kids as adults, and try them as adults. That's really kind of the last straw, the last option. In terms of how it's changed, there's a lot more treatment facilities that are available to us. They cost a lot more money now to us and to the taxpayers, but again, there's more money available from Austin and from different grants that we apply for and actively pursue and use to do the rehabilitation that we think is necessary for the kids. In terms of it being more strict, I know that my attitude has changed even more towards trying to rehabilitate kids rather than to punish kids. And when I first started, I was certainly more stern in terms of everything, in terms of the adult system, in terms of the juvenile system. And as time goes on, you find yourself more contemplative about how really you can solve problems rather than just use a hammer and punish. You use a scalpel rather than a hammer. And I hope that it's more effective. I think any judge, I know Judge Hinojosa, the federal judge, and I have often discussed how different we are from now from when we first started. And I think it's just a matter of age and more maturity in looking at the entire situation, having a better group view of the world and everything that happens and that has happened. And your view of things just kind of gets not more jaded, but certainly more contemplative about what you want to do with a certain defendant or a certain juvenile.
Because, I mean, it's one of the things where we kind of forget, because we're in the system as far as being a judge or being a defense attorney or prosecutor, is we have so much power. You can change a young man's life very, very quickly with a stroke of a pen.
That's
and
right.
So it is something that you have to think about.
Right. Certainly. I mean, difficult cases are, when a young man has been involved in an accident or a young man perhaps has been using drugs and someone's hurt real badly. And, you have to punish because there has to be an answer to society, but you have to be careful not to punish so much that you ruin two lives and end two lives rather than just the one person that was hurt in the accident. So, I mean, it's never an easy decision. Certainly the public doesn't like what you do a lot of times in terms of punishment of young offenders, but you have to look at the entire situation as to what you can do and what you can do best in the situation that you face yourself. And every situation is different.
Because, I mean, it often would be easier, like you said, just to use the hammer and say, hey, look, you're certifying you, I'm going to send you 5 years, 10 years.
Sure.
That's the easy solution.
Sure.
Yeah, the hard part is making the tough call and saying, hey, maybe we can help this kid.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true, Chris. And hopefully you do the right thing. And, nobody can tell really until afterwards whether you made the right decision or not. But you know for sure that if you use the hammer, you're going to ruin two lives rather than just one life.
Yeah. And
maybe I deserve it. Who knows? Some cases I've certified them and not felt bad that I did it all. Sometimes I think about it twice.